Good Saturday morning to you, and welcome to On the Mark, along with Mark Papa. I'm Gary Byron. Mark Papa from Financial Resources Group over in Glastonbury. You can find them online at www.frplan.com. That's F as in Frank, frplan.com. And write this phone number down. More so, use it. Here, write it down right now. 860-657-8380. 860-657-8380. And by the way, if you want to, when you're on his website, frplan.com, look for the link to YouTube, because Mark has his own YouTube channel. Or you can go right to YouTube, and in the search field, just type in Mark, that's Mark with a K, Papa, 3 P's, P-A-P-P-A, 5207. Mark Papa, 5207. And you can catch this show and all the other shows that we've recorded over the last about a month and a half. And by the way, if you missed any of that, those points of contact, I will repeat them throughout the show. Mark, good morning. Great to see you there, my friend.
Hey, good morning, Gary. How are you today?
I got to tell you, now that we're in April, you know, it's spring. I don't feel the temperature yet. I do still a lot of rain, unseasonably cool. But I can tell you this. It's a good transition month because we know that the terrible stuff is behind us, and it should be good in the foreseeable future, just going on and on and on. The only problem for a lot of people is what's coming up in a couple of weeks, and that's tax day. That always seems to make a lot of people, particularly small business owners, a little nervous.
Yeah, I would say that's the case. They've got to get everything ready, finish up their last minute tax returns, and those are tough. The partnerships all have to be in by the 15th of March if you haven't filed an extension as a small business thereafter, and then usually the accountants will grind it out for you by April 15th and take it from there, make your estimated payments. But it is a stressful time for a lot of people. And it's a stressful time for me also because we do have a tax business, and I'm getting, calls and dinged and pinged and,
That said,
yeah.
Do you have recommendations regarding maybe a tax strategy for someone going forward? I know everybo's different, but generally speaking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to encourage people. I work with tax planning, not preparation only.
Right.
Preparation is just a flat out, you're a glorified data entry, data entry clerk. And the bottom line is the best thing you can do is be proactive, chat with your advisors, talk to your accountants during the year before you make any decisions. Because, again, I mentioned this before. Once 1231 rolls around, it's irrevocable. Then we have to jump through all sorts of hoops to fix that. Now, there's people who've come to me. I have 2 examples this year. I'll give you one very recently who inherited some money. And instead of taking that money out a certain way, they could have taken it out as a death claim and spread the income out over their lifetime. They instead took a lump sum, and that lump sum actually increased their taxes dramatically when that could have ultimately been prevented. We had another case where in that case there was still a little bit of room for this woman to deduct some money from her IRA. So I said, you didn't make an IRA a deductible IRA contribution because everybody wants to do Roth these days. And I don't agree. I don't disagree with that. Let's, we have all-time lowest tax rates, and Roths are great. However, in order to bring her return down, we had to figure out how much she could still contribute to that IRA. And we had to get very, very granular because if we just put the whole amount in that IRA, only $3,470 of that contribution would give her the tax deduction, and the rest would have been trapped in what's called a non-deductible IRA. So what we're able to do is say, well, keep that different. The Roth, you made the $8,000, and just take out that $3,400 and change. We'll get the deduction, the full deduction. So we were able to drop her balance due by $300 or $400 just by making that move.
Wow.
Yeah, just shifting from one pocket to another. And so those are the kind of things we can do. But, that was luck. Unfortunately, most people come to me, the damage is done. So prepare ahead.
Isn't there an inheritance tax?
You've got to have substantial money to pay inheritance tax now.
Well, what's
nowadays.
Substantial money? $500,000?
I think it's like somewhere around $12 million. You can gift up to $12 million a person, 24 a couple. That's not the exact number, but I forget what it is for this year.
How about a gifting tax? If you wrote somebody a check for, I don't know, $20,000 or something, I don't know.
Well, you can gift to your children every year. So I think it's $18,000 a year without any tax consequence. But if you do that, then all you need to do is do a gift tax return and just state that percentage is above the giftable amount, and just you do a gift tax return. That's all. You document that. That does go against your annual lifetime gift exclusion. But again, most people aren't going to hit that. So, if you want to gift a house, you have to record it. You can't just say, here you go. Here's the keys.
Well, that could be a quit claim, right?
You can do it as a quit claim, which I don't ever recommend because the quit claim will then now the new buyer will inherit the original owner's cost basis. And then when they go to sell it, they're going to get murdered in capital gains. And I had a couple of those cases this year, too. So you don't ever want to do that. Talk to a good estate planning lawyer, good tax person, and we'll give you the right advice on how to handle that.
I mean, what if you came into money? What if you came into $500,000, $500,000 from a 1099? Maybe you were a consultant, all right? There's a lot of consultants listening. If you were a consultant and somebody wrote you a check for $500,000, what would you? What do you? How are you going to get taxed on that? Let me ask you that.
Well, the first thing you're definitely going to pay, self-employment tax on whatever your net is. And if you fall below a certain income level, again, if you're married, it's different. If you're single, it's different. You may qualify for what's called the B&I deduction, which is 20% off the net profit of the business. That was under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. Hopefully that gets extended. But you're going to have to deduct all your expenses, your travel, your mileage, any computers you bought, any business expense is going to get thrown on your Schedule C. And then you can deduct a significant amount if you set up your own 401k plan. So for independent contractors and consultants, you can sock a lot of money away, somewhere in a 401k plan, because you not only get to do whatever the legal amount is for your age. So let's say you're under 50 or over 50, you can do that minimum contribution free and clear as long as you have that equal amount of income. But then above that, you can also do a profit sharing plan for yourself. So you can really tuck a lot of money away. And I'd recommend that people do that, because otherwise it's going to the tax man for sure.
Busy time of year. You find yourself more busy right now than any other time of year?
Yeah, this is probably the most taxing on my body as well. Yeah. So I do have some help, and I've partnered with some wonderful people who are helping me out. And I will be transitioning the majority of my tax business to other CPAs. However, in addition, I will be working directly with my advisory clients, so we get that one-on-one attention, so that we're making sure they get the most income and they're paying the least amount of taxes in their retirement. And those are the kind of things that we can definitely do.
Great stuff.
Yeah, more income, less, lower your chance of running out of money too. So more income, lower your chance of running out of money, and you're going to pay less in taxes. It sounds like that's the deal that I physically do that, and we have results and proof. So if you're just paying the normal thing and sending more money to the government, doing more withholding, that means you're just not getting somebody who's sitting down with you and planning.
Yep.
Another thing I'll bring up, if you own mutual funds in a brokerage account, oftentimes there's a mutual fund in there that does a lot of trading. Remember I talked about trading costs and turnover costs in the last couple episodes and what that actually impacts people. There was a couple clients of mine that, again, were with other advisors. They inherited some money that got hit with like a $12,000 capital gain on their tax return. And that went directly against all their Social Security, all their other income, all the interest that they've earned. And it caused a big, giant tax bill when it didn't have to. If that money was in an exchange-traded fund, that capital gain would most likely have been a zero. And instead of paying the government, that money would have been reinvested for their purposes. So these are the kind of reasons why people should get with me, bring their documents, bring their home insurance, bring all their legal docs, bring their tax returns, and bring their statements, because we can scrub through them in forensically and find all these opportunities for them and find benefits that they're owed that they're not aware of. And that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I was going to say outstanding info. Excuse me. I figured. Oh, pardon me. So you got me all choked up over here. I want to talk a little bit this morning about manager tenure. I've heard that term, and I figured, geez, you know what? Next time we get together, let me ask Mark about manager tenure. So maybe we could start at ground zero here. Start with what exactly manager tenure is, and then we'll take it from there.
Well, that's a great question, Gary. In manager tenure, it's just a fancy schmancy term for what is the average manager's experience at a particular fund, or we'll call it mutual fund or SMA, which is a separately managed account. How long have they actually been hanging around and doing that? And I like to use this example with clients all the time about teenage drivers. So versus an experienced driver, Gary. So let's think about this. When you were a 16 or 17-year-old, you first got your license. Mm-hmm. Now, do you have, at the time when you're 16, do you have better eyesight than a 50-year-old?
Of course you do.
Right. How about you?
even at a 40-year-old, the guy.
Yeah, you've been a 40-year-old.
I needed to get readers at 40, so.
Exactly. Yeah. And how about your reflexes? Do you think you might have been a little quicker with being able to, steer out of the way of a squirrel or step on the brakes? You think you
faster reflexes? Well, it's nice to be young again with the knowledge that you have now.
Oh God, yeah. I would. That's the one thing money can't buy is time, right?
True.
We're not there yet. Someone might figure that out. When they do, I want to know. So let's think about this. Let's say you had a new car. You wanted a new car delivered. You went online, that service there, and they just dropped the car at your house.
Actually, that's how I bought my last car. I bought it online. It's out of Texas.
Yeah, and they said, okay, Gary. And then the owner of the dealership said, hey, my 18-year-old son's going to be dropping the car off. Or would you rather have me drive the car? Which one would you pick?
Neither one of you. Can you please have it flatbed and brought to me, delivered to me like that?
That's, absolutely. But if they had to deliver it in person,
well, you want an experienced driver. Experience always wins out, my friend.
Yeah, experience always wins out. And the same goes when again, this is just as if you were in a meeting with me, Gary. I'll ask the same thing to a question to a client. So, how about a pilot, right? So if we had a pilot, do you want somebody who, was driving, flying your plane, although they're licensed and certified, that they just got out of the Top Gun school and they're these young buck hotshot pilots on your airline? Or would you want that guy like a Captain Sully kind of pilot driving your plane? Who would you rather pick?
Who do you think?
Yeah, it's Captain
Same
Sully.
thing with a surgeon. Do you want the guy right out of med school, or do you want the guy that's been performing open heart for 30 years?
Yeah, the guy is doing the 30 years, and he's seen the nurse faint and drop the scalpel and whatever. They've been there before. So all the knowledge in the world doesn't replace.
There's no substitute for experience.
Exactly, and I was going to use an example too about some maybe a hotshot radio host, but why do you think you're in your position, Gary, and they don't have a 22-year-old hotshot radio host?
Thanks to somebody who had a lot more experience than yours truly, Brad Davis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and we all need mentors in our life. So, and then the interesting part here is if you take a look at the best money managers. Okay, who's got the best long-term track records of any? You can Warren Buffett is obviously one of them.
Well, yeah.
Mario Gabelli, there's another one, Mario Gabelli funds. They've been at this, 30, 40 years. So what's interesting is there's managers, and Gary, I gave you a little sheet here with the manager tenure here.
I have that sheet.
And this is an actual portfolio of, from an actual live portfolio of somebody who has a whole bunch of different mutual funds in there. And you'll see here, there's some managers that have 30 years experience, right? Mm-hmm. And now if you're going to be investing with an active manager, someone who's actually physically watching over the money, managing it, 30 years of experience versus if you go down to the bottom here, there's one here was 8.25 and another was 6.75, the average manager. So if you think about it, if you're around 30 years, so how many market crashes have we seen in the last 30 years? I'll give you some examples,
2.
Right? I started in the business in 1996, so that's 29 years roughly.
Oh,
so I started out in 1996, and I saw the market go gangbusters from 96 to 2000. It was the most insane market ever. Okay, everybody made tons of money. And then when the market crashed in April of 2000, guess what happened? Everybody was bailing out. Right, the bailing out. And over the
remember 87? I know we were in high school back then.
I remember the crash of 87.
Yeah.
That was one of the first panic crashes that we'd seen in a while.
In our generation.
Since the 73, 74 bear market. But yeah, that was the first real crash we saw. And that, crashed the system. That was a scary day for a lot of people on Wall Street because no one could figure out what was going on and everything froze. So that was scary. Then you had, 2000 rolls around and the market starts recovering in 2003 to 2007. We had the housing bubble. And we saw probably one of the ugliest crashes since the Great Depression. Follow that on to further up the pike. 2011 was not all that great of a year, but then you get further up. So my point is, further up to had the pandemic, which was an ugly crash, right? And then and then we're having some pretty turbulent times now due to the tariffs and for many other reasons. But if you've been through that before, Gary, how hard is it to navigate if you've been in through the choppy seas and you've come out okay? Versus somebody who's new and they have never seen it before, right? How do you think those money managers are going to be reacting in a bear market like that?
Well, yeah, that's tough.
All right. So what we do, Gary, is we want to take this list through our friends at Morningstar, okay? And Morningstar we use is because it's third party. Is Morningstar giving us any biased advice?
Well, not if you're third party.
Third party.
Yeah.
So we take all your funds and we put it through Morningstar, and we want to see how many of your funds have managers, let's say, with at least 20 years of experience. I mean, in this case, this is a very common case if you look at this. Okay, the American funds had a manager tenure of 27.25 years, and had some other issues with it, but either way. But then you scroll down here, there's a Templeton World that had 8.58 years, and a Fidelity Pyramid that had 6.5 years. So you're paying a lot of these, and they're paying a lot of money to these guys. I mean, this one's 0.60, this one's, so they're actually paying a fee, okay, for the manager, but yet the 1.03% for the Templeton World, but yet they're paying for a guy with 8.58 years of experience. You see about that?
Yeah, I see that.
And now, when they could trade that same advisor could pick somebody with 30 years experience. Should that advisor be doing for the client?
Yeah, making them more money.
Making them more money, right? So you see there's only a few managers here that have experience, but what are we seeing with the rest of the list? If it's less than 20 years, how many, you have a 6, an 8, a 7, are these guys actually, they're paying money not only to an advisor, but the advisor is picking, people with very little or a lot of experience.
Well,
according to this.
Yeah, you need to have a lot of experience in order to do this.
Yeah, exactly. So, and again, so you have, your Warren Buffetts, your Mario Gabelli's, there's also Bill Ackman and some of these other guys have been around a long time. So, yeah, obviously more experience is the way to go. And what's happening is that people are paying for less experience, but yet, they're paying a higher cost and they're getting less what in this example? Experience, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why we like to talk about that. It's super important. Because we want to make sure that if you're...
the answer is just more experience. That's what you're saying here, right?
Yeah, and I guess when we meet with our clients, we'll ask them, what's the motive? The motive is, why do you think your advisor's picking the clients with less, picking the advisors, the managers with less experience than more experience? And guess what we find out? Is that the advisors get paid a little bit more sometimes to pick those funds because they're on what's called the preferred list or the research list at their firm.
But if I'm going to make more money and I'm going to feel a lot more secure, I can justify that added expense and go with somebody who's a little more because they've got more experience.
Yeah, I mean,
I can rationalize that.
Yeah, you could pay a little bit bigger fee for somebody who's got a better track record and more experience. I don't see any problem with that, right? Because you feel comfortable with it,
right?
And there's nothing against that manager if they're doing a wonderful job. But what we'll find out in some of the next segments is a lot of these managers aren't doing such a great job at all. And in fact, you're paying a lot of money when you could be getting that for nothing.
Folks, you are listening to On the Mark with Mark Papa. I'm Gary Byron. You can find him online at www.f, as in Frank, frplan.com. And write this phone number down. It's 860-657-8380. Okay. And if you missed that, I'll give that I'll repeat that again more towards the end of this show. All right. So please continue, Mark.
Oh, okay, Gary. So, again, just to reiterate, one of the things that services that we offer as part of our full checklist review is to check things like your manager tenure to make sure that if you're paying, for an advisor and you're paying for active managers, people who you're trying to beat the market. Let's face it, you could go into an index fund, no problemo, and pay next to very little for that same index fund. And the tenure in that case, it's just a basket of stocks. So there's really no one managing that on a day-to-day basis. So I definitely would like to talk about that in the next segment and talk to you about things like risk versus reward.
Go.
And then,
I want to hear about this.
Risk versus reward and also diversification. So how much time do we have some more time?
About 6 minutes.
Oh, perfect. So why don't we talk about, so now that I have the manager tenure down and we understand that we want managers with some experience, why don't we talk a little bit about risk versus reward as well? Mm-hmm. And risk versus reward is kind of an interesting thing. And Gary, I provided you, I think, a copy of the scatter
I don't have that, but it's
okay.
We can't do many visuals here.
No,
on
I
the
understand.
radio.
So I just want this. So that's basically just assist you to kind of follow along a little bit, so that you can understand exactly what I'm trying to say. So Gary, what we do is we take all your funds, and how many funds do you count there, Gary? I think there's like 12 different funds.
Yep.
Something along those lines. And we have about 12 different funds in this portfolio. And so what we want to do is we want to see exactly how much risk each one of these funds are taking and what exactly the reward is. So we take our friends at Morningstar and we take what's called our risk-reward scatter plot and we go along one side. So one axis, the one that goes up and down, is actually going to be your return, okay, how much money you're going to make potentially. And then on the bottom half is how much risk you're taking. All right. And then what we do in simple terms is we draw a line through that. See that black dot in the middle? Mm-hmm. That's the S&P 500. So we start from zero and we draw a line through that. Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
So, Gary, you're familiar with what the S&P 500 is?
Yeah, Standard & Poor's.
All right. It's a Standard & Poor's. So it's just a basket of stocks. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then what we do is we show the customer or client that based on their scatter plot, this black line that I'm showing across the top, they can get for free. So if they can get that for free, okay, then we look at their different funds and we say, well, how close are your funds to the line? And they'll say, well, they're really far away. That means that they're paying a manager taking the same risk, but they're not getting the same return. Mm-hmm. The reward is if they can go into something like similar to the S&P 500 or the global index fund or Vanguard, European, whatever. So whatever, there's index funds of many different flavors, all sorts of indexes. But basically what we're here to show them is, unfortunately, they're taking on tons of risk, but they're not getting compensated for that risk. Okay?
Sure.
So that's part of another thing that we would be able to do for folks when you come in is show you, hey, you're paying a fee. Okay, so you're basically paying more and you're getting less for what you could is if you were to just be in an index fund on your own, right? In simple terms. So, and risk is a huge thing because, how often, Gary, do you hear, people get jittery on the markets?
Always.
And they,
but you got to understand the market's volatile anyways. You've got to be able to have, I would imagine if you're going to create a portfolio, you've got to diversify it with high risk and low risk, just so it balances itself out, right?
Right, exactly. So high risk and low risk. So it's super important. As much as we try to get and pinpoint with people what their actual risk tolerance is, what we find is people will come to us and we find out that their portfolio is significantly more risky than they thought they had.
Which means they could lose more, but they could also win. They could win. They could make more, but they could also lose more.
They can also lose more. So again, when I look at this scatter plot here, Gary, what you'll see is all these different dots, and these dots represent the client's funds, their actual funds. And that black line that I draw across the top, those funds should be above the line. But if you take a look at those little dots, how many of those dots are below the line?
Yeah, several.
And are they anyone even close? Or are they mostly way below the line?
No, they're way below.
Right. They're way below the line, but they're paying a manager and an advisor to what should be above the line or below.
I would hope they'd be above.
Be above. So what I want to do again is offer my full checklist review. And if you do the full checklist review, there's a $100 gift card for your time to compensate you. There's no cost or obligation. But we'd like to help you discover yourself exactly what's going on in your portfolio, how much risk you're taking, how much you're paying, how old is the manager, and how long have they been in business, and making sure that if you're going to be paying somebody a fee, that you should be getting more for your money or less for your money. And what we find is most people are getting a lot less for what they're paying than they thought. And when we show this to them at this point in the meeting, their advisor is pretty much toast at that point. At least we get the clients to tell us that, again, the reason why this is happening is because either their advisor doesn't care, their advisor's too busy, or he's doing it because he just wants to make money. Okay? And that's how we do it. So I know we're getting towards the end of the show.
We have 1 minute left. Go ahead.
Yeah. So again, please take advantage of my offer.
Now, if they sit down with you and do this checklist, they get a $100 gift card, right?
It's a $100 gift card. So the first meeting is what we call the goals meeting. It's about a 30 to 40-minute meeting. And we sit there and we talk about your goals. We ask you, do you want to make sure you don't outlive your money? Do you want to make sure, do you want more income? Do you want to make sure your money goes to the right places? So we go through these different goals. And at the end of that meeting, we basically ask for a commitment. And the commitment is to come back with your information so that we can analyze it in places like Morningstar. Once you do that, then we sit down for a couple hours and we go through there's like 21 different points. And it takes a couple hours to get through. But, at the end of that meeting, you're going to know more about yourself than you would, than you've ever have. And you're going to be really surprised. So take me up on that $100 offer.
And I'm going to give you how you can. And for those of you who've been listening to this show for a while, you've already learned a wealth of information just from the beginning, which just imagine if that customized around your situation. All the more reason for you to check out Mark online, www.frplan.com. FRPlan. FR stands for Financial Resources, by the way, frplan.com. They've got offices in Glastonbury. You can call to make a no-obligation consultation. Do the checklist. Get your $100 gift card, 860-657-8380. Once again, 860-657-8380. For Mark Papa, I'm Gary Byron. Thank you so much for listening to On the Mark. Until next Saturday morning, have a good one, everybody. So long.